Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing The Whale. This was directed by Darren Aronofsky. This is his 8th feature-length film, and it is similar to his film The Wrestler in the sense of getting an actor who maybe hasn't worked in a while, like Mickey Rourke, and I think he recognizes naturally that this is an acting vehicle more than a director's vehicle. And so Aronofsky hand selects Brendan Fraser, of all people, and those of us who grew up in the 90s, I think, know that this is, in a sense, a way to appeal to us, but also just for an audience. It's a subversion of what we expect, and I think Brendan Fraser has always had a very varied and interesting career, whether he was doing like really big action movies or doing more kind of like slapstick comedies, dramatic work, or sometimes a combination of all three. And no matter what he did, there was always a very earnest quality to him, like a vulnerability and an honesty that, especially in the eyes, because he has very round blue eyes, that the camera just picks up all of that emotion instantaneously. And that's why I think naturally he's the perfect subject for a film like this. I think it was the naivete and the relatability, but also he had these movie star good looks at the same time, so he could be accessible to the public in terms of Hollywood. But I do admit, even though I did see all of his movies a million times as a kid, I was never a huge fan of him. I kind of saw him as kind of like a Danny Kaye type. I know that's a really old reference, sorry. Yes, naturally it is an Oscar cliche to be able to, bring in an actor who's been in a career slump to have this great comeback story and all of that. But at the same time, it does work thematically even for the material. It is art imitating life for sure. And this is one of those things where it's like, if the shoe fits, why not wear it? When I look at the movie overall, or just like the material itself, I find it to be quite flimsy. And I think it is skin deep, pun intended, I suppose. And I think this is a great example of just how important it is to have really great actors breathe all this dimension and nuance into material that is quite hammy. This is just a great ensemble here, elevating material that is just not very good, in my opinion. If anything, I think the writing is doing a disservice to the talent that we see here, especially Brendan Fraser, I've got to say, because it feels like, just in terms of the movie, it felt almost like everything was going against him. Even just the directing itself, it is very minimalistic, but in a way that I think is, again, providing a bit of a disservice because, it's creating some movement and some, cinematic dimension and stuff because it is a confined space. But I don't know if it necessarily mixes with the material in a harmonious way, and I don't think it represents it emotionally necessarily. But even more so, and this is interesting, I tended to struggle with a lot of the prosthetic makeup that Fraser is wearing here. Obviously, he's wearing like a big fat suit and he has all of this stuff. And normally, I can't stand that in movies because I feel like, it's the makeup artists that are doing all of the work and then the actor just goes and picks up the Oscar. I just see no universe where the actor is working nearly as hard as the makeup artist. But again, in this situation, I felt opposite. I felt that the makeup was a bit of a detriment and certainly didn't work artistically or anything like that. And he was the one kind of saving face for it. The fat suit, I don't know, it just didn't seem very authentic to me. Or I didn't buy into it. I didn't feel that kind of just that corpulent, like that heft. I mean, yes, naturally, he's, moving very slowly and all of that, and yet I didn't quite feel it in the ways that I wanted to. There was something kind of cartoonish about it. And a lot of the close-ups, I think, of Brendan Fraser's face as well are also quite cartoonish, and yet just what he is conveying in his eyes and the voice and the emotion, it transcends a lot of, again, what you're seeing. And another thing I think that is kind of interesting about the performance is, in a way, just a little bit, it kind of follows Aronofsky's brand of kind of going for like that bordering on camp and bordering on comedy. I think as a filmmaker, his sense of humor is very underrated, and I know I've said that before, but I think there's something that Fraser is capturing here that almost feels too overwrought emotionally. It almost feels too forced, and yet it's not. It's this balance of what is both dramatic and resonant at the same time, giving the character a real pulse, giving the whole story, I think, a pulse. This was originally a play that they made into a movie, of course, and when you look at the writer himself, you can sense naturally that he's trying to get to an honest place, obviously, because his main character quite literally is an online college professor who's telling his students, please just write something honest to me. But at the same time, I think he's really lacking a lot of the perception and the boldness to really look into his own heart and find some more interesting pieces to chew on. Explore more the tough questions rather than going straight for like the schmaltz and going for, again, the overt sentiment. It just feels like a lot of sacrificing authenticity and what is more difficult for the convenience of plotting. And often any subjects that involve judgment in any way, whether it is the concept of homosexuality or being morbidly obese or, being a religious person. All of it gets very compartmentalized, reduced to very cookie cutter ideas of what is, villainized or what is heroic. Even just the whole retribution arc for our main character, I'm not sure that I buy it. He is very cookie cutter in a lot of ways, and I don't think that there's a huge leap that we need to make here. He is a likable person, and yes, he's made a lot of mistakes, but there's something about that sentiment in terms of how we're supposed to believe in the character that just feels a little bit too sparkly and too twinkly. I think the material is just a lot more interested in appealing to him rather than exploring him, and I also think that, again, creating this white knight sort of redemption arc, I don't feel that it's that dramatic. And in fact, it becomes very skeletal, especially as it goes on, because the ideas are so one note as they are presented. But again, you have really great actors that continue to come in. People like Samantha Morton, she can make a single mother, working mother who is very bitter, seem very believable. Sadie Sink, I think, gives a nice pluck and makes the movie more interesting, just being that rebellious teenager. Of course, she is too smart for her own good, and we know that cliche as well. But also Hong Zhao, I think she gave one of the best performances in the movie, gave a real nice hardness but a humanity to her character. The boy in the movie kind of interesting and hard to suspect. I almost think he could play a villain at some point in his career, but I digress. I've watched a couple interviews with Aronofsky on this movie and how it came about, and I guess I'm still not quite understanding what it is about the material that he felt he really could artistically serve. If anything, I'm surprised he didn't want to really dramatically change the material, but kind of keep the concept intact, because actually the concept itself feels very Aronofsky. And, exploring the unlikely fellow's experience, especially somebody who is bound by their own limitations. I think he's more honest and reflective through the more kind of creative, stylized stuff compared to this, which is a little bit ironic, I guess. It's not a bad film, but I do think it is disappointing for somebody like Aronofsky, especially compared to what he made previously, Mother. That said, I do think you should check the movie out because, the performances are really good, and they are so good that they will move you emotionally. I found myself quite emotionally stirred. I don't know if I'd go to the movie theaters to see it just because, it seems a little bit expensive, but I see this as a kind of a perfect streamable movie that you might watch on, I don't know, HBO Max, Hulu. Worth your time. It's not going to stop the presses in my view, but the performances I think might. And that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist and I do commission portraits, and I also sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are wonderful. Guys, thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.